005 Renewal Calling for Human Science Postmodern Kabbalah. Allow me in opening to narrate the backstory, for it frames my incursion into the field of human science. For as always, where hides evil? Well, evil hides where you least expect it. The devil is in the numbers. I had a calling one day while making infant incubators back in Mexico City. While I listened was that I wasn't made to make infant incubators. Instead, that I was made to make incubators, yes, but for the human spirit. It was then that I decided to make a radical move, and not without a struggle, a convulsive one at that I came over to Austin back in 2002. Since then, I've been writing and teaching science at alternative education centers for the Austin Independent School District. Starting at the ALC, Alternative Learning Center, where kids that act up get sent. Later on at the Travis County Juvenile Justice at the Garden Beds facility, starting at detention, then moved on to residential, and lastly, I will be at Phoenix House, a drug and alcohol rehab center. My original formation is in physics, with philosophy the common denominator spanning from as long as I can remember, sprinkled with theology, as did as well business administration. Due to the needs of the educational and justice system and limited resources, of course, it is the case that it has a unique setup suited to the characteristics of the student population. All classes are stacked up, meaning that I may have students in all my classes ranging from middle school on up to high school sciences, not to measure computer credit recovery and miscellaneous others. All this happens all across the board, not just in science, also in English, math, and social studies. However, I would limit my narrative to my subject area of certification. I teach biology, IPC, chemistry, and physics. At one point, I asked, what is the common denominator in all these sciences that might help me teach the subjects to meet expectations? I'm not a one-man band, certainly not a know-it-all. So at one point I posed the question as follows. There is science, lowercase s, since there are sciences, namely biology, chemistry, and physics, but is there a science, uppercase S? This is not a trivial matter. It goes to the very heart of the ideal of the university project, dating from Plato's Academy and Aristotle's Lyceum, and more recently during the medieval period with the universities in Italy, Spain, England, France, and elsewhere. The ideal of the university is unity in diversity, of all knowledge on the globe at all times, and so on. If there isn't one unifying principle in the university, this means that what we teach is hollow at its core. The foundations of science are as sound as hanging from a brush, in a manner of speech. Some might object, responding that, hey, there's a scientific method. But colloquially speaking, guys, all that the scientific method says is that stupid is as stupid does. It effectively reduces what to how, leaving the why unaddressed. That is, we teach hollow core science, and being sapiens at the root of what we are as Homo sapiens, beings of science, no wonder we're perplexed and tearing at the seams living in Crisis City. Up to the 17th century, philosophy was searching for the single integrating principle, but it all stopped there and then. We had to thank Newton since he allegedly solved it, but it was more like a palliative patch remedy than a lasting solution. In a regular school setting, things seem to work reasonably well, though I have no direct experience in the matter, having always taught in an alternative education environment. But under stress conditions, like in a juvenile justice setting, it all breaks down. The worst thing that can happen is living in denial, believing that there is no problem. Things are as they are, because that's the way things are, plain and simple. Just deal with it. Our world is broken because it's inherently broken. So goes the saying. Next, I'll present a couple of slides that illustrate the role that Socrates, Pythagoras, and Moses played within our seed of life pecan model. The thing. So we have here Moses. Moses, you would say, plays the husk. Socrates here would play the shell, and Pythagoras would somehow play the kernel, and I have them all here piled up, Also, I'll take this opportunity to compare and contrast the varieties of thought out there. Magical, rational and revelational. Let me read it. Rational, magical, and revelational thought. Ratio. On the one hand, comparison, and on the other hand, between, above, and below. Ratio. Numerator, letters, and on denominator, numbers. So that the resultant is the numerator over denominator. So we have here creation, and then we have revelational thought, the given, okay? The one is given, and the triad is just plain old vanilla, rational thought. And there's a footnote that I'm putting here that magical thought fudges both, okay? It didn't recognize the difference between dividing by zero, which is infinities, and not dividing by zero, which is the finite. They just fudged everything. In any case, the first step is rejection of the Newtonian methodic helmet, followed by acceptance of the Socratic dialogue as foci of ellipse. Foci of ellipse. We have to take off the Newtonian methodic helmet that everything is science, and that everything is a scientific method. Okay, recognition of the Pythagorean triad in complex right triangles, so that the vertical and the horizontal, and finally the Mosaic holistic crown as the square. Too many cooks spoil the broth. You don't need a rabbi, no scholar to let you read a Torah teaching. As the dictum goes, la'asok b'divrei Torah, engross in the study of Torah by yourself. Just you and the text. Of course, seek counsel by all means, but at the end of the day, it is a direct connection between you and the Torah. Let's stick to Moses and the recipe as found in Bereshit, Genesis 1:1-2:3. I rediscovered the unifying principle for the reconstitution of our broken world. The scholars are not listening, so let the people decide on the status of it. We don't need middlemen, interpreters. After all, it's just primeval common sense, easily understood by anyone who pays attention. The whole is triad parts, that all is 3 in 1, in 4 tiers. What is Kabbalah reception? It simply refers to the tradition that comes down from the revelation of the Torah teaching to Moses at Mount Sinai through the centuries up to today. So then, modern Kabbalah is just the update of the classical Kabbalah. Well, yours truly, Ricardo Turullols-Bonilla, and God bless.